A young woman got into the habit of using the payphone at a nearby gas station at midnight every night to speak with her lover for about an hour at a time. Her family has been the subject of a mystery for 20 years, and as you can imagine, things did not work out well. Elaine Nix was 18 years old and lived in Gainesville, Georgia. Those who knew her described her in different ways: lively, gregarious, independent, pleasurable, and happy. She was a senior in high school, eager to start her nursing career after graduation and receive her diploma. She was tiny, only about 5 feet 2 inches tall, and weighed only about 100 pounds. Despite this, she was very vocal and daring. The three most important people in her life were her boyfriend, Billy Millwood, her friends, and her family. However, Elaine encountered financial difficulties and, unfortunately, dropped out of high school. She worked at the Up the Creek restaurant as a hostess. She was allegedly trying to act responsibly and make plans for the future, though it's unclear how well that was going at the time. Her partner, Billy, lived about 30 miles away in Cleveland, Georgia, with his mother. Given that they had only recently started driving and that they were both still 18, the 30-minute drive seemed much longer than it was. Rather than driving to see each other, they would talk on the phone almost every night, sometimes for hours at a time. Elaine had been paying about $75 a month for long-distance calls to Billy from her home phone. She had been doing this for a while. Her parents were very annoyed by these calls because they were from a low-income family. They decided to forbid long-distance calls altogether, so Elaine would need to find another way to communicate with her partner. Elaine immediately thought of payphones. She discovered that if she used the payphone at Zach's Food Rack, a nearby gas station on Candler Road, she could talk to Billy for as long as she wanted for just 35 cents. This became a habit after a while. Elaine would call him nearly every night at 11 p.m. Typically, Elaine would depart for her home after nearly an hour of talk. In September 1999, Elaine had a particularly driven evening. She decided she would go to church with her father. The speaker asked those in attendance if they desired to give their lives entirely to God. That night, Elaine decided to raise her hand. When she got home, she was excited to share with her mother all that she had learned, especially about a specific Bible verse that seemed to imply that God would always forgive you. It was the one that caught her attention the most. But in just one day, catastrophe would strike. At first, September 20th, 1999, was a pretty dull evening. Elaine spent the entire day sick in bed and eventually got a nasty message from her lover on her pager. Long-distance calls were blocked, so all he could do was tell her how angry he was by sending her a string of numbers that together spelled out the code FUB on her pager. I'll let you figure that one out. But none of this was unprecedented. The couple had quarreled, fought, broken up, and reconciled 100 times, according to Elaine's mother. She dressed at her quiet suburban house at about 11 o'clock, wearing a white t-shirt, white and blue athletic shoes, and khaki pants, before heading out to give Millwood a call. She went outside to her usual pay phone and tried to talk him down and see what was bothering him. She went to the gas station as usual, taking the winding, wooded roads that led off the two-lane highway. She made it to Zach's, which was closed for the evening, after about 5 minutes of driving. She pulled into the gravel lot beside her usual pay phone to make the call. Customers would regularly come and go throughout the day, even after the store was closed, and truckers would frequently pull into the parking lot and spend the night there. That payphone conversation between Elaine and Billy lasted, on average, 60 minutes. Phone records were used to confirm this. Her parents were sure she could work things out with him over the phone that night, just like they usually did. Billy claimed that their main topic of conversation was their upcoming camping trip. Still, it's hard to know for sure what exactly they discussed. Billy assumed Elaine would go home and close for the evening, as was customary after they hung up. Nothing really seemed out of the ordinary during the conversation because Billy never really looked at anything or felt like something wasn't right. This was the last thing that anyone who knew Elaine would ever talk to her about. Elaine did not come home. At first, Becky and David, her parents, were not too concerned. Instead of going home, she would frequently stay at the home of a friend or cousin. She was usually very independent, doing most things by herself now that she was a legally recognized adult. She had also tended to flee up until this point, but nothing had ever come of it. Her parents assumed without question that she was just with her lover or a friend. A few hours later, a police officer on duty in the neighborhood noticed Elaine's 1986 Toyota parked in Zach's lot. Interestingly, the hood didn't get any colder, but nobody was around. The officer left the scene without giving the car any more scrutiny, clearly not too worried. In addition, Elaine's absence from her job at the restaurant the next morning left more questions than it answered. Given that it was payday, everyone knew that something was off. She didn't ever miss a paycheck. It was that check that she truly wanted. After learning about the issue over the phone, the parents went to the last place they knew she frequented, which was her usual payphone. When they got there, her car was still in the parking lot. The keys were still in the driver's side ignition with the window down. She had neglected to put her purse and cigarettes in the passenger seat. She was a regular smoker, so it seemed odd that she would forget hers if she thought she would be gone from the car for a long time. The only thing that was obviously missing was her address book, and she was nowhere to be found. Elaine's mother went into the gas station and inquired of the attendant how long the car had been parked there and if anyone had been around it all night. Unfortunately, the clerk didn't start working until that morning. It was closed the whole night through. The car was there when she got to work, and no one had been around it in, well, forever. Elaine's mother made a grave mistake when she drove her car home. She had no idea that, in this looming case of missing persons, the car held the most crucial piece of evidence. She drove the car home after removing it from the scene and contaminating it. Elaine's parents reported her missing to the police once they got home. Still, the police were initially unconcerned. They thought she was just a runaway, which, at 18, she was allowed to do, and they expected her to come home soon enough on her own. However, that was about all the initiative they displayed. They did put up some barriers and asked a few people if they had seen anything. From then on, Elaine was viewed as nothing more than a fugitive, and the police did not put much effort into tracking her down. Given her lengthy history of running away from home, they assumed she had just done it again even though she had left the car in that condition. According to Elaine's mother, Becky, the sheriff initially suggested that Elaine had run away to become a dancer or that it was likely that she had fled to Florida along with a small group of close friends. When the police learned about her history as a runaway and had spoken with her friends and family, they apparently believed she was nothing but trouble. The parents assert that they were told that, normally, you can't file a missing persons report until after they've vanished for a predetermined amount of time. Still, the officers said that by filing a report and assigning them a case number, they had done them a favor. Years later, when news organizations looked for that report, they were unable to find any proof of its existence. We, therefore, don't know if one was ever submitted. Elaine's family believed that she had not escaped this time because she had left everything behind. They decided to organize themselves and form their search party. They tried to follow every move she had made the previous day. As quickly as they could, they scrawled some handwritten posters for the missing and began pasting them on every stop sign and light pole they could find. But according to David, the father, their signs were always taken down shortly after they were put up. They searched all over, but they were unable to locate anything. 9 days later, on September 29th, Becky was working from home. The family had a few cousins and a local preacher visiting them when the doorbell rang. It was a detective from the Hall County Police. They let him in and went into the living room. Unaware of what the policeman would reveal to them, the family sat down, simultaneously excited and terrified. It was the last thing they ever wanted to hear, in the end. "We found your daughter, but sadly, she is no longer with us." About 17 miles from the payphone, on Verona Avenue, a protected industrial park, a man mowing the lawn for one of the local businesses reported smelling foul. He followed the scent wherever it led him and found Elaine's naked body in the fetal position, buried in the underbrush. The industrial park where she was found was right off the highway and surrounded by thick forests. There weren't many other streets nearby. It was a quiet, shadowy, and well-kept place, just the kind where a murder would most likely happen. The investigation also included the Gwinnett County Police Department because she was found just beyond the Hall County line. Because of the extreme heat that week, the body had already decomposed to a very advanced stage. Therefore, Elaine's identity was determined by her dental records and the faint traces of two tattoos, one of a butterfly and one of a frog, one on her ankle and the other on her lower back. Since there was no sign of an injury on her remains, the examiners surmised that she may have died by strangulation or suffocation, even though the cause of her death was unknown. She was naked, but her jewelry was still on her body. Oddly, this jewelry was left on, given that her clothes were taken off, even though it was inexpensive and unlikely to be stolen. Her boyfriend's promise ring remained on her finger, and she wore a beaded black necklace around her neck. The outfit was nowhere to be seen. Elaine's body was in such bad shape that her funeral was soon held in a closed coffin. Her grave was in Memorial Park in Gainesville. During their investigation, the police found out that Elaine's call ended at precisely midnight on a regular basis. Nobody knows what happened after that, though. Detectives had very little evidence to work with and no idea what had happened, so the investigation quickly grew cold. David, Elaine's father, is concerned that Elaine might have seen something improper that evening at the gas station. He believes she may have been present for a big drug deal before being exploited and silenced. With scant evidence, the police nevertheless pursued the case. If they continued, they might eventually be able to locate a breach of some sort, they hoped. Elaine's best friend from high school, Jennifer Boyd, believes Elaine's killer was most likely a local. She thinks the killer probably knew her personally. She was worried that the offender might still be present and could be moving among them without anyone noticing. Elaine's parents haven't given up on finding the murderer either. Even now, they still conduct interviews. They even mentioned having the police exhume the body in the hopes that new developments in technology would provide new clues. They lived in the same house for nearly 5 more years after Elaine passed away. They left her room undisturbed, precisely as it was. But in the end, a number of painful memories and some financial issues led them to decide to relocate. Everything she owned was kept in sealed boxes that she would never open. Her then-boyfriend Dilly, who was the last person known to have spoken to her, has a long criminal history and has served several jail sentences. His 2-decade criminal history includes a variety of charges, such as drug possession with the intent to distribute, violence, and other offenses. After being released from prison, he kept in touch with Becky and asked to see photos of Elaine on a regular basis. He has wanted to tell Becky something because he feels so strongly about her, but after serving his time, he always returns to jail rather soon. She figures that he knows something about her, if only a little, because he was the last person to speak with her. On the anniversary of her body's discovery, a large number of people who are still in contact with Elaine attend a vigil at her Gainesville burial. Her family and closest friends frequently attend. She was not resentful of anyone. She made no disparaging remarks about anyone. "I just miss her so much," said Jennifer Boyd in an interview. Naturally, they are all still hoping that her killer will one day be apprehended by the authorities. "There is a murderer out there." Jennifer continued, "One of us is a killer every day. What we want is justice for her." They all gathered around the grave and prayed. They launched balloons into the sky carrying written messages for Elaine and prayers for them. Jennifer wishes to inform the murderer of something. "You acted in a very self-centered manner. You took a beautiful young life and destroyed it for her, her friends, her family, and everyone else she touched. I hope you were in pain every day for knowing what you did and not coming forward to at least give the family some closure." She insists that the transgressor make amends for their actions. To get updates on the case, we have contacted the police. Since then, they have stated categorically that there isn't any new information to discuss. Still, they are giving it their full attention. They haven't really given many details, but they have had several suspects over the years. They just won't say who they are. But in the end, none of them were ever charged. Despite the fact that they have run into multiple dead ends, they also think that all of their current suspects may still be suspects in the end. It is to be expected that her murder remains unsolved. Her clothes have also never been found. The investigators carry on with their work nonetheless. Many people believe that Elaine was abducted by a crazy truck driver who had spent the night at Zach's house. The driver presumably saw Elaine as a cute, vulnerable, and attractive girl and took advantage of the opportunity to kidnap her. Some wonder if one of the employees at the plant where her body was found killed her. Elaine's father was informed in 2005 by an unnamed informant that 4 men had seen Elaine being carried out of the gas station that evening. Verification of this has never been possible. Drug misuse was yet another widespread problem in the neighborhood. Elaine was taken out of the picture because it's possible that she witnessed a crime. After all, she was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Many more explanations and proposals have been made over the years. Still, the majority of them have been rejected because they do not make sense in the context of the information that is currently available. These are probably scams. There is still a $5,000 reward available for information leading to the identification and capture of Elaine Nix's killer. If you have any information, please don't hesitate to call the Gwinnett County tip line at the number I've provided in the description below and on the screen.